My mom still to this day will say your father kidnapped you. A parent's not going to tell a kid, hey, secrets from adults are a bad thing if they want that kid to keep a secret. I've had to be my mom's mom for as long as I can remember.
I think that a lot of people will find it really inspiring to know that there are children who have grown up and realized what the hell is going on. How are we being made? How is profit being made off of our trauma? We're not okay with this, and we're standing up to it. And that's our message, right? That's our message.
100%. 100%.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for being brave enough to speak out. I've been on a lonely little island over here. I am so thankful that you're taking this step to share your story and to, prove that this is real. So welcome, Samantha, and thank you for being here.
Absolutely. It's kind of sad that it's like, yay, but what else do you do? You're like, at least there's others.
I just kind of look around and I'm like, where are they?
Yeah, it's not talked about. It's like it's some big hush word that we're not supposed to use. And even in courts, like you're not supposed to talk about parental alienation. And in schools, they don't talk about manipulation tactics or emotional health in that aspect. So you're at your most vulnerable age where it's really easier with people that you just naturally trust are going to do the right thing and be honest with you because they tell you better be honest. Figuring it out is not easy. Figuring it out is really hard. I think that's a big part of why people don't talk about it. It's not out for a lot of people to know like what even is parental alienation or what are some examples of parental alienation. I had to look it up. And like, and then you're looking at it and you're like, wait a minute, I recognize that. Wait a minute. And it just kind of clicks and you're like, whoa.
Can you tell me more about that, about how you figured it out or the process? Like, did you do a Google search?
So part of me recognizing what I went through was parental alienation was really, really slow at first and then kind of all of a sudden and re-traumatizing. When I was younger, my parents went through a custody dispute when I was as a child right away at 10 years old. You're being exposed to that. I stopped talking to my dad of my own accord for about 2-3 years, maybe even a little bit longer. I didn't start talking to him again until my late teens, like 17-ish. I don't know if it was necessarily because I was getting ready to go off to college or I realized my mom was a pain in the butt or what exactly kind of triggered it, but I did start to talk to my dad again a little by little, very distant, and he and I do have a relationship now. It's not 100%, but we do have one. I didn't really recognize that what I'd gone through was parental alienation until I started dating my now husband and watching him and his kids go through it. And then I was like, those poor kids, because I'd been there. I've been those kids. I remember like, well, wait, why is this happening, and being confused and not understanding it, or like seeing my husband be sad because he's reaching out to his kids and he's not being allowed to talk to them. Like all of that really made me like, what is this called? And then I found a name for it. And I'm like, holy cow, like I recognize this, I recognize this, I recognize this. And it's like some secret and you're not supposed to talk about it. So it was really eye-opening. It's been weird.
So how many years ago was it that you put the name to it?
2016 is where it really started to get kind of like triggering enough for me to start like looking into it and figuring out what it was. So a while ago.
Okay. And what was that like for you when you first figured it out? Did you accept it fully? Or was it something that you had to kind of come to terms with over time? What was that process like? And what were your emotions like? What were you feeling?
I think immediately it was relief that I wasn't like crazy or alone, that there is a name to this and it is something. Immediately followed by like dread and anger and frustration and sadness. I did not run immediately to my mom. to talk to her about it, just from prior experiences as a kid. Like, trying to get my mom to take accountability was not something that was going to happen ever. So going to her in this instance, I already knew was not going to be smart. So I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, like, and he still to this day is very guarded in how he talks about it. He still will not, like, he won't talk bad about my mom the way my mom will talk bad about my dad. He'll be like, yeah, she can be a lot. Like, he'll use very careful words in how he describes it. He does not dog her the way that she does him.
Everything you're saying is right on point with my experience. It's like, why are you being so nice to her? She's so mean to you, type of thing.
Yeah.
So you went to your dad.
Yes.
And did you ask him questions, or did he confirm?
He did not flat out say like parental alienation. He won't even use those words. I don't think that he fully recognizes what it is either. He apologized to me. He's like, I'm sorry that you were dragged into that and that you went through that. And I'd held a lot of anger and resentment that Dad uprooted our lives. Dad threw this custody battle at us. Dad is this mean, horrible person. So, like, now I'm looking at it like, how much of this is really did he do? And he did explain that he is not sorry for the custody battle. The reasons that he started it were, in his opinion, justified because he was concerned about my sister's medical issues, which is a whole other trauma dump. That's a whole other trauma dump. My sister was not mentally well at the time. And my dad thought that medication was not the answer, and my mom did.
Okay, that makes sense. Can we go back to the beginning? So your parents split when you were 10?
They split when I was really little. I was probably 4 or 5.
Okay.
4 or 5 when they initially got divorced. I remember the house we lived in. It was in Lacey, Washington. And I remember the house we lived in. I remember both of them in that house, but I do not remember them in the same room ever together. My mom told me they used to fight a lot. I don't remember them ever fighting. I don't remember them in the same room. And then they split, and then I'd go see Dad every other weekend, and then I lived with Mom a majority of the time, immediately.
Okay.
And then that is how it went until I was 10, and Dad reopened the custody. He opened a custody case against my mom.
Okay. So you have the one sister, or do you have more siblings?
Just the one sister. Something my dad did mess up on that I can kind of see his point of view, but this is kind of messed up. But also I can't tell how much of it is Mom's kind of brainwashing.
That is.
I remember. Yeah, brainwashing. Keyword.
You don't know what's true, and
yeah. And you question yourself all the time.
I'm so sorry that you have to go through that too. It's miserable.
Yeah.
For me. That's the worst part for me.
Well, and I live with both of my parents as an adult, and so like I kind of pick up on that stuff, and it makes me question stuff too. But my dad did pull us into a room when we were like 9. And he'd asked us, hey, do you want to spend more time over here? Do you want to like maybe go on a couple vacations? We were thinking about maybe going to Disney. Like, what do you think? And we're kids. So we're like, yeah, like, cool, whatever. But I think his point of view was deeper than a child could anticipate. And he kind of took that as it's okay to open a custody battle. He took us to Disney. And while we were at Disney, he served my mom papers with a restraining order that she was not allowed to contact us and that he was going after emergency custody. And my mom still to this day will say, your father kidnapped you. Your father kidnapped you. I could not get a hold of you. Your father kidnapped you. And that is how she talks about that. I was a kid. I had no idea. I remember Dad asked a weird question. It was whatever. And then we went to Disneyland. And then I was supposed to go to Dad's house. And I wasn't happy about it, because my life is being uprooted. But really what stood out was my mom being incredibly emotional and using really negative terminology and being hysteric and dramatic. That was more the trauma than, I'm already navigating my whole life being uprooted as a 10-year-old kid. And then my mom's upset, and my mom really parentified me and expected me to be her emotional support. So now I'm like, oh, mom's hurt. I got to go help her. And I don't understand. And then it left a big crack for her to really get in there and cause some damage.
Okay, you totally don't have to answer this if you don't feel comfortable, but I am wondering why your dad filed for emergency custody.
Absolutely. My sister I still don't know exactly what my sister's 100% diagnosis is, nor is it really my place to talk about it, but she was incredibly violent. She was putting bleach in my soda. She was chasing me with knives. She was chasing me forward with a nail in it. Again, my mom used to say that the custody battle and the divorce took the light out of her eyes, and you can see it in pictures. So my sister lashed out bad. Like she attacked our dog. She attacked me. Anything that and my mom was not good at hiding favoritism. I was the favorite, so I think that also put a target on my back. So it was really bad. It was not good. And my mom would not call the cops. I remember she got stabbed with scissors, and my mom would not call the cops, even though my sister stabbed her with scissors. And I got burned. She threw me into the fireplace, and I got burned. My mom would not do anything. So finally, my mom talked to a doctor, and they put her on medication. That was the response, was to put her on medication. And my dad thought the medication was not an answer, from what I can understand, but my dad also only saw us every other weekend. So I guess that was a big part of their dispute. I think it'd be a lot easier for me to understand if dad just wanted to spend more time with us. I can understand having differing parenting opinions, but there was already enough trauma there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Trauma dump, sorry.
No, you're fine. I don't apologize. You're allowed to tell your story. And the fact that this happened to you at such a young age, and gosh, I feel bad. I do feel bad for your sister too, because
she needed help and I needed help, and I constantly went to my mom and this is something that is also something I'm relearning as an adult. I have a lot of resentment, one, towards my sister for putting me through that, even though, she needed help and she wasn't getting it. But two, I went to my mom, for safety, for help, and she did not help me. And again, with her piece of shit husband that she remarried, I went to her for help, and she would not. She's going through divorce with him now, and now lives with me because she's going through divorce.
Wait.
So, yeah.
Your mom currently lives with you?
Yeah. That's why I'm at work doing this, because she's at my house.
I have so many things to
I know.
I have so many questions.
I know.
How are you? We don't have to talk about that if you don't want to. I don't know.
I'm fine with it. It's weird. It's a weird puzzle navigation. It's my mom and I's relationship. I've had to be my mom's mom for as long as I can remember. I've had to be her emotional support. She's had me be her buddy. As an adult, with my mom coming to live with me now, going through her divorce, my sister reached out to me and she was like, you need to set boundaries. Like, mom's not paying you rent. Mom's not why aren't you setting boundaries for mom? And you need to protect yourself and your family too. And that's kind of eye-opening too, that I almost feel like I don't have a choice, and it's just kind of my job to take care of dad and take care of mom. That's why I've lived with them both as an adult. I'm taking care of other people, and that is a consistent trait in my life. Is I will consistently take care of others way before myself, but I always have to take care of others, and that's something that's I acknowledge it, but working on it.
Thank you for sharing that. I can relate as well, and I just keep having so many questions as you're speaking.
The trauma goes so deep. I'm so sorry.
I'm trying so hard not to to interrupt, but as you're speaking, I'm
you're good.
That's relevant. That's relevant. That's relevant. Crazy.
Mental note, I don't mind if you're taking notes as you go to remember your questions. Okay,
maybe I should do my pen out. So I have a few questions, but I just want to ask. So, did your mom alienate you and your sister from your dad, or was it just you?
don't know how deep her alienation went with my sister. I'm not sure how some of the alienation happened, but I know that it wasn't like she talked bad about him, but she wouldn't try to hide it. She would just do it with a friend in front of us. So I know she was hearing it. And I know to some extent it did affect her because I remember my mom making the comment very often that I was more like her and my sister was more like my dad. But then she's talking bad about my dad. So guaranteed that caused some issues. Like I'm not super close with my sister because of past trauma with her, but we have got a little bit better of a relationship now. She's definitely aware to some extent that our parents are not normal or healthy, but I don't know the exact extent.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So can we go back to the age 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Around the custody battle, I remember my mom being so upset and just there was a lot that she would do that like I said, I don't always remember all the little ways that she made me not happy with dad, but her being incredibly emotional and talking negatively about him and the situation in front of us was really something that kind of like, I have to protect mom and dad's the problem. I ended up going to be back at mom's and I was mad. I was mad at dad. I was mad with the situation. My life had been uprooted. Everything had just changed. And then mom's upset and there's all this crap going on that I can't control. Nobody cares what I think. Nobody cares what I feel. Nobody stopped to ask me during it what's going on and or how do you feel or are you okay. Nobody asked me that during any of the custody. And finally it just got to the point where I didn't want anything to do with my dad and I lashed out at him really hard. I had to have been 11 or 12. I just kind of was like, fuck off. Like I don't want anything to do with you. Like you cause me pain and I don't want to see you. And I remember my dad looking at me when I said something along those lines to him and he's like shocked and hurt. And he's like, I never meant to hurt you. And I'm like, well, you did. And he took that and he stepped back significantly. He did not keep pushing. And I needed that. I needed him to stop and just back off. Because as painful as that had to have been for him, sorry, I don't want to get emotional, but it's already been an emotional day. So he stepped back and he gave me space. But as a teenager, an older teen, 17, and as an adult, especially now going through kids of my own, my dad, even during that time, went to every single choir concert. He showed up and he gave me my space. But he'd sit in the back, he'd take a video of it, he always videotaped all of my concerts. He was still there. Every holiday, St. Patrick's Day is big in my dad's side of the family because we're Irish. He'd send me a card in like a little keychain or a little piece of chocolate or something to show that he was thinking of me. Valentine's Day, same thing. Easter, same thing. Even if I wasn't going over to his house, he wouldn't parade me with gifts. He wasn't trying to win my love. He was patient and present in a very subtle way. And I needed that time to be angry and away from him. So that way I could kind of calm down and also come around on my own. But I am so thankful for my dad for giving me patience when my mom necessarily did not.
I'm really sorry. It sounds like no one was there for you. Like you had no one to take care of you. And on top of that, you had the burden of taking care of your parent. And I think a lot of children feel that way in this exact situation. That's how it was for me. And I think that's what happens. They see the child as an adult. They treat you like an adult. What were some of the beliefs that you believed at the time when you made that decision about him? And do you remember anything of your mom instilling those beliefs in you?
Yes. I distinctly remember my mom on multiple occasions, and still to this day, she refers to it as he kidnapped you. I distinctly remember that. I remember mom crying and being hysterical when she would actually get to see us during that time that we were with Dad, and we would go visit her. It was just like incredibly emotional, and she didn't hide that there's court and your dad's behind it, and she left it just vague enough that we didn't fully understand. We just knew that Dad had something to do with it, and Dad was pushing it, and he was the root cause. Comments like school inquire and like things that were important to us were probably going to change because of this court. And so here my life's already getting uprooted. And then even going so far to talk about her time when she was with him in a relationship. She'd make comments about how he was always controlling in the relationship, and she wasn't allowed to go do things on her own. And those little comments just kind of added up. She never specifically, I don't remember specifically her saying, you know, your dad's a bad person. I don't remember her specifically saying like, oh, you should just tell him that you don't want to see him anymore. I don't remember her specifically pointing out those things. It was just implied and very heavy on the emotions of what's going on with things and being too involved. She did not try to hide court paperwork. It was just out on her desk. I know because I was a snoopy little kid and it's out there, and I know Mom's upset about it, so I'm going to look at it. And I didn't understand half of it, but, you know, it's there, and it shouldn't have been. It should have been locked away somewhere. So there's still things where every now and then I look back and I feel like Mom should have done better at keeping her emotions to herself or keeping her opinions about the situation to herself. And it's like we were not allowed to be kids. We had other things we had to do, which was, you know, well, Mom's upset, so I got to take care of Mom. And my sister will even say that she had to do like the more business side of things, like finances, like, oh, Mom's stressed about bills, so she would have to go do math with Mom. And I was the emotional side where like Mom's crying, I have to go make her feel better and talk to her about her problems.
You mentioned something earlier. I don't have a choice. You said I don't have a choice. And that really gave me, like, when you said that, I got the goosebumps because I felt like that until this year, honestly. It took me actually moving across the country to not feel that sense of responsibility and guilt if I were ever to not do it. Do
you feel lighter knowing that you escaped it to some degree?
What?
Do you feel a little lighter knowing that you've escaped it to some degree, or does it still weigh heavy on you because you still have all these questions and frustrations you can't work out?
It's I don't feel that sense of what you said. I don't feel that anymore. And,
okay.
But do I have, it's been honestly a grieving process when I decided I couldn't have my mom in my life.
I really think something that would have helped me personally as a kid, I was already going through therapy. Why was it not discussed in school or in therapy? This is manipulation. This is not healthy. You should not be an emotional support for your parent. That's not normal. You should not have to overhear negative things about your parent from another parent. Parents these days are expected to have these conversations with the kids, but if the parents are the ones doing it, they're not going to have those conversations. The same thing with like sexual assault. A parent's not going to tell a kid, hey, secrets from adults are a bad thing if they want that kid to keep a secret. They're not going to have that talk.
I never thought of it before like that.
If we put it on parents, they're not going to talk about it.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
And you're being turned against the parent that could talk to you about it, but you don't believe them because they're the bad parent. So why would you believe them saying, hey, that's manipulation? You shouldn't listen to that. You're not going to listen to them. You have no one else telling you.
That is such a profound realization. That is really spot on. Do you know, like a lot of courts of law, like psychological abuse is not considered, child abuse is not considered a crime.
I believe it, but it's incredibly frustrating. But I also understand it's hard to prove. But I really feel like if you sat down and spent a decent amount of time with any kids or any parents, like guardian ad litems, a guardian who can go in and be a representative for the children. If they're trained to recognize signs of manipulation or certain cues or, cues of parental alienation, I really think that one-on-one time with the family in both households, at least, a few visits, not one, a few visits, I really think they'd be able to get down to the bottom of it and be like, something's not adding up here. There's certain keys, phrases that like kids will use big words that you could tell are parroted. You can tell a kid's not going to come up with that word on their own. So I really think that there is room to figure it out, but whether or not the court wants to, it doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit them to help the kids or to look into the damage that these kids are doing. And people aren't talking out about the damages, so why would they?
A lot of people would lose a lot of money if parental alienation was a crime.
Yeah, there has to be more to it than just a court balancing numbers and listening to a he said, she said game. Obviously, both parties are going to point fingers. Obviously, both parties are supposed to come up with as much evidence as possible that's actual, like, evidence, not just hearsay. But how often are they actually taking a peek into that world or looking into it through the eyes of the child going through it? They're looking at it from a number standpoint. They're not looking at it from a kid who's lived through it.
So we can talk about what it's like for a kid to live through it. When you were 10,
Yeah.
10 to 17, you said 17 is when you figured it out and went back to your dad?
Yeah, I think I was around 16, 17 when I started to talk to my dad again. And I got a huge negative reaction from my mom when I did, too. I'm glad you brought that up because when I was my senior year of high school, our choir competition, I think this may have been why I reached out to Dad, actually. Our choir was going on competition to Disneyland. And my dad had gone to every single choir concert ever. My mom's been to maybe 2. I've been in choir since I was in like kindergarten, first grade, all the way through high school. And my mom went to maybe 2 concerts. My dad went to every single one. Every single one. Even when I told him to go fuck himself, I never want to see him again, he went to every single choir concert. And here I am in choir and they need chaperones to our Disneyland trip. And I'm like, I'll ask my dad. And I reached out to my dad and my dad was like, yeah, I'd love to be a chaperone. And my mom was not happy. Well, I've never been to Disneyland with you. Your dad's already gone to Disneyland with you. That's not fair. Why didn't you ask me? And I'm like, Mom, you're not interested in choir or my choir competition. Well, that's different. I just don't want to listen to a bunch of kids screaming for an hour. It's just not. I'm like, how is this different then? And it was just what she could benefit off of. And pissed that it was Dad and not her. And I think that also kind of like that wedged it a little bit further where I was like, she's not being rational. She's not being fair or understanding of where somebody else might be coming from or why somebody else would feel this way. And also, I really acknowledged and I straight told her that you went to maybe 2 of my choir concerts. Dad went to every single one. And like that did not register in her head.
Selfish.
Yep.
Do we have the same mom? But I guess my question is like, why do you stay in the relationship?
I love her and she's my mom and I do have good memories with her. I do harbor resentment and I do harbor anger towards certain things, but I guess it's like a spectrum. Like it's not one side versus the other. And I think also not talking to my dad for so long maybe has a part in it that I don't necessarily want to put Mom through that. Maybe part of it's trying to protect her because that's been my job for forever. I'm a people pleaser. I have a hard time setting boundaries. It could be a number of things, but I do love her and I do cherish her, but I have a severe lack of patience for her bullshit now, and I'm not afraid to call her out on it now. And I think that's also empowering that I get to call that out and I get to acknowledge it. And it's almost reassuring in a way that I'm not crazy that mom messed up when I was a kid, or I'm not crazy that, hey, maybe it shouldn't have gone that way. And I would hope that me calling her out on her shitty behavior would make her change for the better. It hasn't too much yet, but fingers crossed. It's a careful line to walk because our government really does not need an immense amount of power. It already has probably too much. But a parent with a little bit of depression is functional, or a parent with, some extent of mental health issues is functional to some extent, as long as they're actively working on themselves. They can admit that they have issues and they're trying to do better and be better, and that they're trying to give their children the best. But when you have someone with such a severe mental disorder that all they can do is think about how to serve themselves, or how does this benefit me, or how does this better me, that needs to be screened for. It's 2023. Everybody's got depression to some extent. So I'm not saying that anybody with depression shouldn't be a parent. God, no. All of us have depression and anxiety to some extent. But you got to be able to, you're a parent. If you have a bad day, you can't hide in your room and cry all day and not feed your fucking kids. You have to be able to put on your big girl pants and get up and be a parent, even though you have depression. And the same thing goes with any other mental health issue. You have to be able to take care of your kids' basic needs. And how are we supposed to document that those things are not being done to those kids when they won't even look at, is parental alienation even a thing?
I agree with that. Were you convinced wholeheartedly that all the beliefs you had about your dad were your own beliefs?
I think probably like 90% of the way.
Okay.
I don't think that I was consciously questioning anything, because I knew in my heart of hearts that, oh, dad's a bad person. But I don't think that if you sat me down and asked me why dad's a bad person, that I would have been able to give you an answer that was not very obviously from the mouth of my mother.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great way. That's perfectly explained. Wow. What effects did you notice on yourself during that time and after you just made the decision to not really trust your dad or be close?
I think I needed the space from my dad because I had all this anger that had basically been planted in me, and I needed the space. The effects is I feel sad and guilty from not having my dad in my life during that period of time. And I'm so thankful that he still continued to make an attempt, but still respected my space. That was huge that my dad did that he respected my wishes. That was the first time that someone really listened to what I had to say. Granted, I had to yell and basically cuss at him to get it, but he listened that I needed space, and he still was there if I needed him. He left the door open. He made sure that it was obvious the door was open and I could reach out at any point in time. He made sure I knew he was thinking of me, but he gave me the space that I needed to be angry. And I think that was probably the biggest effect that I had that helped me to go back to him later on. And especially now as an adult or as a teenager looking back, I really appreciated that. That's
an important thing that not many people can probably understand, but I can understand that. I don't think we finished talking about Disney. So your dad, you went, so he agreed to go with you to Disney?
Yes.
And how did that change your relationship?
I had a positive experience with my dad outside of my mom's interference. I was at an age where I was able to draw my own conclusions. So when you're younger, it's a lot easier for your emotions to be manipulated, for your view of things to be manipulated. And once you get to a certain age, it's kind of like you're set in your ways and you kind of develop your own personality. So when I got to the older teenage years and I'm starting to realize, mom's not 100% there.
There.
Yeah. And then I'm having an experience with my dad outside and away from her and just kind of drawing my own conclusions. I think that was really, really helpful. And again, like, I still didn't necessarily recognize that it was parental alienation then. I didn't question him about the court stuff. Like, we didn't talk about it. We just were like, okay, we're going to go to Disney. And that was that. It was almost like slowly rebuilding the relationship and the trust before you kind of have those big conversations. And even then, like, it wasn't until years later that really, like, I started to, like, ask questions or talk to him or even figure out, you know, something was not how it should be.
On that Disney trip, when you were able to see him in a new light, what was that like for you?
It was refreshing. It was nice to have the support, because here is the dad who has supported me through, you know, years of choir, and he's been respectful when I needed my space. So it was nice to go get to do something fun. And also, like, because I had to grow up so fast and take care of my mom all the time, I didn't get to always enjoy the little things. And so with my dad, he was very big on, let's make the memories and let's enjoy the little things. So he wants to live in the moment. So getting to just live in the moment and be in Disney and eat the churro and ride Big Thunder, it was freeing. It was very low key and relaxed, in a really good way to open up the door to really be into things again.
Oh, it seems like a really special
Yeah.
time memory.
Yeah.
So when you said that later on you questioned him, or that you asked him about things, when was that and what was that like?
I think, like, a little bit here and there at first, and then I really, when I put a name like parental alienation to it, is really when I questioned him. At first it was like, he took me to go to check out the college I was interested in. It was a vocational school, but we went on a road trip to go see it, and he took me to that. And at some point, I remember telling him, like, you know, when I was 13 and mom acted like she was 13, it was cool. But now that I'm 17 and she's acting like she's 13, it's frustrating. And he was like, that is how your mom can be. And I understand how frustrating that could be. And I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. So that was kind of like the opening of it. And it wasn't, again, like, he was very guarded in how he answered. He would not go into details, and I didn't pry. And then in 2015, I started dating my now husband, and late 2015, early 2016, his ex-wife started to really withhold the kids, and it got bad fast. And I remember being a kid in a split up parent situation, and, like, that bothered me, to see kids in a split up parent situation that was not in a healthy, like, communicating kind of way, and seeing him upset that he wanted to talk to his kids and he couldn't, and the kids don't understand what's going on. That reopened a lot. And I was like, this, like, I was angry, and I wanted to protect the kids, because, like, I remember being a kid and nobody asked me what I wanted, and I was like, somebody needs to talk to those kids. Like, somebody needs to talk to those kids. And I started looking it up, like, you know, what do you do in a situation when, you know, the kids are being withheld and you can't talk to them, or you can't tell them. Like, it was nearly almost 3 years that he didn't get to talk to his sons.
I can't even imagine how traumatizing that must have been for you to, like, see that and know, oh my God, that was me.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I connected it. That's when I started looking it up, like, how do you help the kids, is when I started really looking into it, is how do you handle this? Like, because obviously, like, you're pissed and you're angry and you want to protect the kids, and then you want to help your husband who's upset at the time and he doesn't know what to do, and does he give them space and stop trying, or does he keep trying? And there's no right answer. And so you're looking it up, trying to find answers, and then there it is, parental alienation. You're like, you start reading an article on it and you're like, wait a minute, this makes sense. And you're going through it and you're going through it, and you're like, okay, I went through that.
Do you think it's way more common than people believe?
Oh, 100%. 100%. With how often dads only get a weekend, you can't, how are you supposed to be a parent with 4 nights a month?
What is that like? It seems like you must be in a position where you're trying to comfort and be there for a child that's in the same position, a similar position that you were in.
The kid, like I try to relate it more to myself or explain, I remember being upset and that nobody asked me what I wanted. And so I will ask them, how do you feel? Do not tell me what you think I want to hear. I don't care if you hurt my feelings. I want to know how you feel. It's okay if you don't want to see me right now. That's okay. Like I want to know how you feel, and I do not care about the repercussions of you saying the honest truth.
That's
like
so awesome of you that you can use that experience to help them.
I try. I'm not perfect, and I know I make mistakes, but I try. Kids who grow up watching their parents in abusive relationships, they find that normal, and they think that's normal. I think kids need to see healthy coping mechanisms and how to handle those situations in order for them to navigate them better. Because again, schools are not giving them how to cope. They're supposed to get it from their parents. So if somebody doesn't tell them this is manipulation or this is how you handle a big emotion, how are they going to figure it out?
They won't. And that's the point. That's what the parent wants. They don't want them to figure it out.
Yeah. And I guarantee you a majority of alienating parents do not want their kids in therapy. I would be extremely surprised if an alienating parent was like, yeah, go ahead, go to therapy, talk about your problems, learn how to handle your big emotions, because you're hard to manipulate when you're in control of your emotions.
Yeah, that's what you would think. I was forced to go to therapy the whole time, though. But the thing
is,
yeah, well, my mom, she thinks there's so much wrong with me. Like she thinks that I'm just a person I'm not.
Do you think that because she had you convinced that you were so mentally unwell or you had so many issues, that she was also convincing you that if you were to question anything, it's easier to talk you out of it?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I wonder if you can relate, but when my mom, whenever she's mad at me or I said something she didn't like, it would be like, calling me by my dad's name, like as an insult.
She did that to my sister on a couple occasions, but I don't remember her doing it to me.
Because you're the favorite child, so you have the different experience.
She was more mentally mature sooner than I was, I think. She's always been more logical and analytical and putting numbers together. And I was more like the carefree, artsy type of person. So I think that she was able to draw the conclusion of, and especially being the not favorite, I'm pretty sure she was able to draw the conclusion of mom's not all the way there pretty soon. But I do remember this was traumatizing. This was a fuck up on both my parents' part. We did a custody exchange when me and my sister were living with my dad full time and we were visiting my mom. And the visitation had ended and it was time to go back to dad. And we didn't want to go. And so mom's crying because we have to leave, which of course is eliciting a response from us. So we're like, okay, well, mom's crying, let's comfort her. And dad's like, get in the car now. And my sister physically refused to move. I got in the car because I'm upset at this point. But I can see out the window. My sister's literally like holding on to like the door frame in my mom's leg, and my dad is pulling her by her legs, and like my mom's crying hysterically and my dad's screaming. Like it was fucked up. It was so bad. So my mom will still bring that up. She will not let that go. She remembers Cassie grabbing onto her and like crying and, you know, like, I don't want to go. And my dad like ripping her. And I don't know if my sister remembers that. I'm not super close with her when we talk about that kind of stuff, but I guarantee that had to have been traumatic for her.
You said that your mom talks about that and brings that up. Well, that's interesting because I've noticed that too, that there are certain things they'll hold on to and they'll bring up to prove that the other parent is bad, or that to prove that it was your decision to not talk to them, right? Like, and it's
like pouring gasoline on the fire and then blaming the fire when it explodes. They're like, oh, look, well, the fire exploded. No shit. You don't know gasoline's flammable. You're a child.
I know. So I'm like, there's no reasoning with a toddler. You try to tell this is how it would go. Mom, it's really crappy how you brainwashed me to hate my dad. What do you mean? That was your decision, Mom. I
Yeah.
was 9 years old. Yeah, but it was your decision. You 9 years old, 9-year-olds can't make a decision like that.
Kids are automatically like biologically programmed to love both their parents, even in abusive situations.
Yeah.
Severely abused children will still go back to their parents because they love them, and that is programmed in their head. So for a child to suddenly deny one of their parents is really like, what is going on there? That especially like abused kids will protect their parents or continue to go back to it. So for a kid to just suddenly be like, no, something's going on, whether by that parent, by another parent, something that should be a red flag.
Yes, I 100%. Did you ever have moments where it was confusing because your parent did something or said something, or the experience seemed like they were a different person than you believed they were?
Yes, there were a few instances where like you kind of put your parents on pedestals, and like they're human, and you know they have emotions, and you see them go through their emotions. My mom is a very emotional person, so I've seen her like cry and be hysteric and all that stuff many times. But my mom lost her shit on a few occasions, and that really was eye-opening for me. My mom's husband at the time, when she's divorcing now, had made her cry and gone to go to work. And I, being the protector, called him on his phone, which went to voicemail, and told him, hey, does it make you feel like a big man, make my mom cry? You're rude. You need to apologize. Like, I probably called him a piece of shit. I was a teenager. I don't know what exactly I said. But basically, I remember saying, does it make you feel like a big man to make a woman cry? You need to apologize. And I hung up. Well, he saw the voicemail, listened to it, turned his motorcycle around and came back, and came into the house, immediately grabbed me by the throat, pushed me. I was sitting on the back of the couch. My mom was sitting at the desk behind the couch crying. And so he grabbed me by the throat and threw me over the couch and was strangling me and screaming in my face. I don't even remember what he was saying, but I like tried to like smack him, and he laughed in my face and said, go ahead, fucking try it. And so I'm like trying to kick him and slap him, and my mom goes to shove him off of me and shoves her, and the back of her head misses the desk by like 2 inches. And then they stop and they argue and all that. So finally the argument ends. He leaves. No, like this is, sorry, it's just trauma dump. This is nothing to me now.
But I just have to say, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry.
To me, it was another day. But my mom, I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong, and I knew my mom did not deserve to be treated that way. And so and again, you know, my mom's supposed to protect me, and she's not protecting herself. And so I'm frustrated, and I'm like,
you said, I know that he's not supposed to be treating my mom this way, but what about you? This guy just grabbed you by the neck. Was there no thought of this was of yourself? It was all about your mom at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I knew that I don't think that I really learned that I deserve to be treated better until a little bit older. She was going up the staircase, and I was like, we need to call the cops. Like, we need to get help. Like, this is a problem. Like, he attacked us. Like, we need to call somebody. We need to do something. And she stood on the staircase and just like bent over and just screamed and was like, this isn't about you. This is about me. And I distinctly remember her screaming that. Distinctly. And I brought it up now, like as an adult, to her. Okay. And like, she was like, oh, I didn't realize I did that. And I'm like,
it makes you go crazy. They deny your trauma. I call it backspacing my trauma. That's what they do. That's a hallmark.
She just lost her shit. She did not give a fuck. She didn't register. She didn't think about how her continuing to be with someone like that was affecting us. She wasn't thinking about the big picture or what she was putting herself through. And now, you know, yeah, her marriage lasted 20 years, but what does it matter? You're getting divorced anyways because he's still a piece of shit. And she could have divorced him 15 years ago.
So even after all of that, she stayed with him?
Oh, yeah. He cheated on her like 6 times, gave her herpes. I know all this because, again, I'm my mama's trauma dump. I'm her therapist.
Do you think that a lot of this pathology and a lot of what causes certain parents to do this is rooted in some type of insecurity? Or what are your thoughts on that? Your motive? Yeah.
I would 100% think that. I think that this might be getting into my own personal beliefs a little deep too. I think that a lot of people who have kids expect, either on a conscious or subconscious level, that they are getting someone who's going to love them unconditionally, and that is a really big driving factor in this thing loves me no matter what. And I think that that's a really selfish kind of comfort that parents sometimes do on purpose and sometimes don't do. And it's not true. Your kids do not love you unconditionally. Your kids can cut you off and your kids can call you out on your traumas. It's not true that they nothing will love you unconditionally. It's your job to love you. And I think that parents assume they can do whatever and they're still going to get away with it.
I think it's these type of parents specifically that have that mindset. So to me, I think that having a child, deciding to be a parent, is the biggest responsibility you can take on in your lifetime. And if you're not willing to put your child above yourself, you are not in a position to have children.
Yep. You cannot be selfish when you have kids. It's okay to have moments for yourself when you have kids, but your kids have to come before you, before your depression days, before your love for an abusive asshole, before your whatever you're going to put your kids through. You have to put your kids above that.
Before your hatred for your ex-partner.
Yes. You have to love your kids more than you hate their dad. You have to love your kids more than you are frustrated with the situation or more than you need constant validation for yourself. You have to love your kids enough to not put them through that. And you have to love your kids enough to admit your own faults and work on it. All of us are human and all of us are going to make mistakes, and we all will fuck up our own kids in some way or another. The important thing is that we make the effort and we try, we own our mess ups, and we try to grow from them the best we can, and we try to prevent them from happening again. And if a parent isn't able to do that, then they really have no place having it. My mom just doesn't love herself, and that's her problem.
Well, I think the first part they need to come to terms with is I'm not perfect, which I don't think I don't know if I see that. If I see that happening, I don't know. But good for you for seeing all the manipulative behavior and wanting to do better for yourself and other people. I'm curious about how you got there, because a lot of people don't get there.
Really, like I can't think of one specific thing that just kind of woke me up. It was like little breadcrumbs here and there, little breadcrumbs here and there. And then all of a sudden, like I was going through this trauma again, seeing someone else go through it, and it like woke me up, which maybe that's just how I processed it, because when I was in a bad relationship, it was the same thing. It was little breadcrumb, really, like I didn't really pick up on it until suddenly like your eyes are open and you're like, you know, the water is not slowly being turned up to boil. You just realize you're suddenly in boiling water and you don't realize how you got there.
That's a really good way to put it.
My relationship with my mom, she's, like I said, she's the fun mom. So, and I do out of habit go to her with big emotions, but she doesn't necessarily take the time to acknowledge them or dive deep into them. But if I have like a serious issue, like my dad. Again, my relationship with my father is not perfect. I have had several adult screaming matches with my father, but I still have a good relationship with both my parents, but there's definitely strain on both ends.
Did you ever think I have a good parent and a bad parent? Was that something that you had, or was it more a gray area?
When I was 10 during the custody battle, absolutely, my dad was the bad parent and my mom was the good parent. Absolutely. And it got reinforced by being, you know, that age where you're coming into your tween years where you're questioning your parents and you want to go off on your own. And my mom reinforced that behavior. She's like, yeah, go party, yeah, skip school, yeah. Like my mom reinforced that, so that kind of like encouraged that mom's the good parent and dad's the bad parent.
What was it like to try to deprogram your brain and try to figure out what was true about your dad and what wasn't? And how have you come out on the other side, or are you still doing this?
Oh, I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, every day, like I'll find something else where I'm like, wait a minute, or like, the more that I learn about parental alienation and trying to navigate it with my husband's kids is really like, it's taught me a lot about it. And I still will find things that are new about myself that I'm like, wait a minute, I still hope that my mom will take accountability. And to some extent, I feel like there's the possibility for growth, but also I see her as a child and I don't know how much she's capable of.
What's keeping you from confronting her about the parental alienation?
Honestly, I don't even know. It really has never even occurred to me that it should be something that I should bring up to her. I think knowing how she blows up and will not admit wrongdoings, even in a small conversation, I think kind of feels moot and pointless. So that might be why it's never really occurred to me.
Let's go to the people. Oh wow, this seems pretty appropriate. You might have already mentioned some stuff. How can a step parent best support a child going through parental alienation? You kind of just mentioned stability, being
me. I'm still learning. I try every day. Like, I don't have an answer. If you find an answer, please tell me. Being a kid who's gone through it, I try to use that to help me navigate it the best I can. But like I said, I've messed up. 100% I've messed up where I've let my emotions get the best of me. You have to have already, as a step parent, you are expected to have endless patience and endless abilities to do everything. You can do everything wrong and do nothing right as a step parent. So you're already in a losing position. And then you add in trauma or abuse or parental alienation, and you have to navigate that. You are going to mess up. There's no way you're going to be 100%, and you're human. You're going to make a mistake. My biggest thing is, from what I have read and from what I have experienced, I try to give the kids the space that they need to feel their own emotions, to recognize their own emotions. I encourage them to talk about emotions, to go to therapy, to do whatever. The older boy, he is not interested in any of that. He's 13 going on 14. He's very closed off. That door's shut and there's nothing we can do about it. And it's painful. Like, his dad really has a hard time with it, but I have to remind him, like, he shut that door and he needs that space. So give it to him, because I remember closing that door and needing that space. So I think their relationship is okay, but I don't know if it'll ever 100% recover. He is the favorite kid in the mom's eyes, and the trauma goes deep. The younger one, he lives with us full time right now, and he has for about a year, and we've come a long way. And just in a year of him living with us full time, his grades have improved. He's gotten awards. He had the top 5% in all of the nation for more than 30% growth for his grade. Like, there's huge amounts of improvements, and we are still constantly working on it. We're encouraging him to talk about emotions, but we still see signs. We still deal with struggles. He left my little buddy and he came back angry and spiteful and nasty to me in only 30 days with his mother. And now we have to deprogram all that bullshit and start all over again before the next school year starts, and hope that he's able to go in with a level head. So it never ends. It's a constant battle, and all you can do is be consistent and patient and kind and understanding, and apologize when you fuck up, because they need to see it.
I think that's great advice, and
I hope, because that's what I'm trying, and we'll see how it goes. I'll probably put them up in my own way.
I mean, there's a big difference between, every parent making mistakes, but doing your best and taking accountability and apologizing, and then this type of parent who does not do any of that. People are very desperate to know what they can do to help their children come back sooner. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I wish I knew. I really do. I've thought about, I have to be careful, because I don't want to manipulate the situation or fuck it up more than it's already been. But like, I'm not going to lie. The thought of leaving a video open about parental alienation has come up. Or I will purposefully be like, oh, this is really insightful for my situation, and read it out loud. Like, I hope that maybe a little bit of exposure here and there will kind of click their brain on. But it's like someone who has an addiction or who has depression. You cannot save them. They have to decide it is worth saving themselves. They have to decide they want to open their eyes. You cannot force that. And I think that also explains why it happens in some and it doesn't in others. Because with people who have addictions or substance abuse issues, sometimes they find that strength to open their eyes and fight it and want to overcome it, and sometimes they don't. Same thing with depression. You have to decide that it's worth fighting. And if you're not willing to take the steps to question it and how to fight it and how to get better, you're not going to. So as hard of an answer as that is, because it's not really one, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. I don't think there's ever a guarantee that they will come back. I think it varies entirely by situation, by individual, how strong they are. Personally, from my experience with my stepkids, I don't expect the oldest to come around. I don't. I think that the trauma goes deep enough and there's not enough opportunities to rekindle. I think there's a chance probably in his mid-20s that door might be opened, but he has to be willing to do that work. And based off his personality traits and how he's been raised, I don't think he has it in him. The youngest, he's already come a long way in a year, so I'm a lot more hopeful for him, but there's also a lot of opportunity for damage to be done, as evidenced by the last 30 days in his mom's care for summer. So really, it could go either way. I don't know. And I could fuck it up. Their dad could fuck it up. So like we could mess up at any point in time that could push them away further too. So really, it's a careful balance and nobody knows.
Must feel like you're walking on a tightrope. Like you don't do anything wrong. Yeah, you'll be accused of doing something wrong. You can't win either way.
Well, it's the same thing as being a step parent in general. Like you're wrong no matter what. And that's why it's important that when you know you messed up, it's important to acknowledge it and try to do better. But no matter what, you're going to be wrong and you're going to mess up, and there's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is try your best and hope for the best and try to be there to do what you can.
I really started this project to get through to the people who are still in it and to try to wake them up. Mm-hmm. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression when I was 9. And, since I've been diagnosed with the right thing, complex PTSD last year, like now my baseline is not depression or anxiety. I don't have that anymore. Like at all. It's been a year and I haven't had, I'm a different person. And I know that so many people out there, especially in the more severe cases, they can get their lives back if they realize the truth.
Yeah. And, rekindle those relationships and get the opportunity to have that line of communication and those thoughts and those experiences again. There's so many important moments that you miss out on because of that parental alienation, and getting to rekindle that and maybe even get to re-experience it again. My dad, when I was a kid, mentioned that one of the things he likes most about having kids is that he gets to be a kid again. And I didn't really fully understand that until after going through all this and looking back. And he's 100% right. And I get to be a kid again through my stepkids and hopefully giving them good memories to look back on. And I get to be a kid again, re-experiencing things with my dad that I may have missed out on during those years. So
yeah, when your dad's that exact sentence, that's how I feel with my kids. Do you think it's important that more people start to speak up about this, that have gone through it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think that parental alienation is going to be something that's going to be fixed. Definitely not in the next 5-10 years. I think this is something that's going to take a long time and a lot of effort and a lot of people speaking up, because the fact, we don't even really talk about mental health on the level that we talk about it. We acknowledge it, but mental health still isn't being taken as seriously that it needs to be taken. We acknowledge it, but we don't take care of it. And parental alienation is right along those lines, where the court benefits from it right now. So why would the court want to change it? It's not really talked about, and parental alienation is a bad word to use in the courtroom at all. If you say it, it's not going to go over well for you. So it's not acknowledged. It's not talked about. It's hard to diagnose because it's not seen as anything real. So until we acknowledge it and make it real and make it diagnosable and the courts acknowledge it as an actual problem, that's going to be a whole battle. It's not going to be overnight. I think that this is going to be something that probably our children's children is also going to have to struggle through. Enough people are going to have to talk up about it. Enough studies are going to have to be done with enough symptoms that someday we might be able to vote something in to get something changed. But that's on such a massive scale. How many of us actually have the legal reaches to make it happen? I'd love to go down to a courthouse and talk to the judge that dealt with my parents. I would be more than happy to. Can I find that judge? Do I know anything about that? Not a clue. I mean, there's no review site really for like, oh, hey, this judge ruled this way. And a lot of it's just bitter people who lost anyways. There's the kids in the situation are not being listened to or even asked. So we have to step back and really look at the big picture, and I don't think it's realistic. It's depressing.
No, it's depressing because I agree with you. But I can't just sit back and watch it happen.
No, we have to talk about it. No one else is going to talk about it otherwise.
Yeah, I feel a duty to speak out about it regardless, even if I'm not making much of a difference.
You could be the foundation for the people who do make a difference, because if there's not someone to speak out and say this is a thing, other people aren't going to speak out. So you starting this is already asking questions and getting enough people, like you said, there's no adult children who went through parental alienation talking about it. You're the only one, and you've made it public to the point where it's now reaching other people who are like, hey, I know what this is. So this is the ball that gets rolling for those future generations. This means that people need to hop on board, and they need to encourage it and spread it, so that way we can get the conversations out there that need to be had, and it hopefully will reach the people who can make a difference.
What do you think about this? When doing my research about parental alienation, I came across parental alienation in the child, like a syndrome, parental alienation syndrome. I don't know if you've done any research on that, but it's been, disproved or whatnot. Not in the DSM currently, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means it's not in this damn book. And I had like every single check mark on that thing. And I was just, the more I've been thinking about these issues, the more I'm convinced that the way that you're going to have to do it is by having specific screening for the children. Mm-hmm. Because the parents, as he said, she said all day long, with the courts are trying to make money. But if you can prove the child is suffering from this abuse, then it's undeniable. And then the children can get the help they need, because it really is about the children. Their brains are developing. It's also about the targeted parent, of course. That's abuse as well. But they're adults. They know how to find the resources that they need. They know how manipulation works, and they know their brain is already developed. It's not, they're not forming their views about themselves, or it's different for the child, I think. And if we can, I don't think it would take that much effort to do enough studies to come up with a method to screen children for this. I really don't. I think
that's what we need. We need someone who can do the studies. And I mean, look at how far the father's rights movement has come in the last, 10 years or so. Granted, it's not far enough. It still has a long way to go, but 50-50 shared parenting, or just how kids do in father's care versus fatherless homes. They've done studies on that, and it shows that kids do benefit from having a father consistently in their lives versus having only a mother. There's studies to show that. There needs to be more studies to solidify it, to keep that ball rolling. And this is the same situation where you need there to be licensed professionals, licensed therapists. Somebody out there needs to hear about this and go, you know what, you're right. Like, maybe Leslie Johannes will do it, where she's like, I've seen these kids go through this, where I can say, A, B, C, D, and open up a poll or bring up whatever they need to do and get the word out there. But there's got to be somebody doing the study, and if nobody's willing to do the study and nobody's talking about it or acknowledging that they went through the alienation, no one's going to go to the studies or answer the questions or do what needs to be done.
It's very true. And I think they have done certain studies, but definitely not enough, and they're being invalidated left and right for this or that reason, whatever. And it's truly, it's heartbreaking to know that there are so many children out there that, I don't know if you've heard of like the whole reunification camps and everything. And now that's really I think the fact that they're calling it a camp and the way that they're doing it is really unfortunate, and I don't agree with it. But the reunification therapy really is the only type of treatment that it currently exists. And right now, like with Caden's law and other legislation, they're trying to outlaw the only treatment that does actually exist.
Well, again, the courts don't benefit from they're being helped for people for this. But even on the abuse standpoint, people who abuse their kids in custody battles will get usually mothers get chance after chance more often than fathers do, but there will be chance after chance given. And even with, significant evidence, they're still going to be given the opportunity to be in the child's life, but they're not taking into consideration how the kid feels or how the kid is handling it. They're not looking into it from that perspective.
And they need to realize, I think, that the child doesn't even know what's best for the child.
The alienator parent is specifically targeting one parent, but they don't take into consideration the collateral, and they don't care.
Of course they don't.
Why would they? And nobody's going to make them care, and nobody's going to reprimand them. And that's also a big part of the problem. There's already very little reprimanding done in other situations. So realistically, as a whole, family court really needs to be redone, and it needs an overhaul in more than one department, and this is a big one. I think it's important that people realize it's scary, but working on yourself in any form is going to be scary. It's still worth it. But again, people have to decide it's worth it for them, and they got to come to that on their own.
Yeah. Well, I think just getting the term out there is important, to have that term out there. If they want to change the term, but it needs to be something that resonates with the adults and the children and the teenagers who are going through this. And
how can people say they have depression and need help with depression if they can't even put the name depression to it or know what the symptoms of depression are? If you go to the doctor and they have a whole depression screening where it's, you answer these questions, and if you score so much, you have depression, you need to work on that. They don't have that for parental alienation, but yet there's all these articles out there, all these, people who've gone through these similar things that needs to be on paper on a test that we can measure.
Absolutely. They just need to get that verified, or do whatever it takes to get that into therapists' hands, the psychiatrist maybe.
There is a pattern enough for people to say that it is parental alienation when you do XYZ. There are patterns out there, and enough people have them. We need it on paper where it can be statistics. We need somebody who can sit down and be like, no, this is what this is. And if we do it on social media, hopefully it'll get out there to the people who can put it into statistics, who can put it into hey, this is a peer-reviewed paper of, hey, all these people went through this thing in different situations, but they all had the same issues. Hopefully we can reach them.
Sign me up, study me. I'll be part of the clinical trial. Maybe if you gain enough numbers, there'll be some power in numbers, because that's how any social movements happen, really. Yeah. So I think it is going to have to be the adult children speaking out like us. And so that's why I'm so grateful that you came on this video tonight. I really am. And I admire your courage. You're not afraid to tell it like it is, even to your own mom currently. So
I'm just thankful that you have this page and that you're talking out about it, and that you're hopefully giving some answers or some relief to people, whether they're the kids going through it right now or the adults going through it right now. And hopefully there can be a change. And thank you for having me and letting me trauma dump.
I think that a lot of people will find it really inspiring to know that there are children who have grown up and realized what the hell is going on. How are we being made? How is profit being made off of our trauma? We're not okay with this, and we're standing up to it. And that's our message, right? That's our message.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you. And
you as well. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry that all of this has happened to you.
You can break trauma cycles. You can do it. And the fact that we're able to recognize the trauma and acknowledge that it was wrong, and we can see the pattern, I think will help us to be less likely to repeat it. And if we do happen to mess up, it's okay. We just have to acknowledge we messed up and then work on it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You can't do anything about the hand you've been given with your parents in life.
Yeah.
But it's not our fault that we have the parents we have.
That really, we are human and we're going to mess up, and that's
hard to think about, but also once you accept, like, I'm not perfect, I'm going to mess up at some point in time, it almost makes it easier in a sense that when you do mess up, like, okay, like, I've prepared for this. Like, I've practiced for this. So, okay, now I've messed up, and now how do I handle it, and how do I make it better, and how do I make sure that it doesn't happen again? So that's how I try to look at it and how I try to navigate it. And like, I know I'm not perfect, and I know I'm never going to be perfect. There's nothing I can do about it except for try.
Just know you're not alone, and I really am happy that we've connected, because you're like the first person I've talked to who has some understanding of this. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and this is gonna help people a lot. So thanks for reaching out, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.